Welcome to another night of shadows and dreams. Come, pull the blanket a little closer. Let the sounds of the world outside fade to a whisper. I am your host, Uncle Grim. Tonight's tale is a dark journey, a forgotten chapter from the heart of a city that never truly sleeps. Or so they say. Before we begin our descent, do me a small favor. A simple click on that like button, a gentle tap on subscribe, and tell me, where are you listening from tonight? I love to imagine these stories stretching out across the map, little embers of narrative glowing in the vast, silent night. Go on, leave a comment below. Now, are you comfortable? Is the room dark enough? Good. Let us travel to Gotham on a night when sleep became not a refuge, but a cage. The rain in Gotham doesn't fall so much as it seeps from the sky. It's a fine, greasy mist that slicks the asphalt and clings to the gargoyles, making the whole city feel like it's weeping. On this particular night, the weeping had turned into a low, mournful fog, a shroud of gray that swallowed sound and blurred the edges of the neon signs, bleeding color onto the wet streets. It was a night for staying inside, for drawn curtains and the low hum of a television. Yet, something was amiss. The usual cacophony of the city, the distant sirens, the rumble of the elevated train, the angry shouts and sudden laughter was muted, replaced by an unnerving, profound silence. It was the kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels empty. Perched atop the old Gotham Merchants Bank, a statue among statues, Batman felt it in his bones. The cold of the stone perch seeped through the triple weave Kevlar of his suit, but it was the cold of the silence that truly chilled him. He was a creature born of noise and chaos, and this quiet was a language he didn't understand. His cowl, a technological marvel packed with sensors and comms, was feeding him nothing but the whisper of the wind and the gentle hiss of his own rebreather. He'd been sweeping the city for 3 hours, a silent, scalloped wing gliding through the oppressive fog, and had seen nothing. No muggings, no carjackings, no deals going down in shadowed alleys. It was a good night, a peaceful night, and it was setting every nerve he had on fire. Second shadow detached itself from the gloom behind him, landing with a whisper of reinforced fabric that was almost imperceptible. Almost. Batgirl settled onto the ledge beside him, her own cowl with its pointed ears and flowing red hair, a stark contrast to his dark, brutalist silhouette. She didn't speak immediately, just took a moment to gaze out at the city veiled in mist. The red lenses of her mask scanned the streets below, processing data, looking for patterns. He knew without looking that her mind was racing, cataloging the abnormality of the evening, cross-referencing it with crime statistics and weather patterns. She was a whirlwind of logic and analysis, the perfect counterpoint to his instinct and intuition. "Quiet night," she finally said, her voice a crisp, clear signal in his ear, filtered through their encrypted comms link. It wasn't a question, it was an observation that carried the weight of a dozen unasked questions. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, his gaze fixed on a lone taxicab parked haphazardly halfway onto a sidewalk a dozen stories below. Its headlights cut 2 cones of pale yellow into the fog, illuminating nothing. Too quiet. His voice was a low rumble, like stones grinding together in a deep cave. "Crime doesn't take a holiday for bad weather, Barbara." He rarely used her name in the field, but the strangeness of the night seemed to warrant a crack in the protocol, a small acknowledgement of the person inside the symbol. She caught the nuance. "I've been monitoring GCPD dispatch. It's dead. A few fender benders on the Tri-Gate Bridge before the fog rolled in thick, but otherwise nothing. Gordon is getting antsy. He's had patrols doing wellness checks on the night shift officers who aren't responding to their check-ins." A flicker of concern crossed her face, visible even behind the mask. Her father, Commissioner James Gordon, was a rock, but even rocks could be worn down by the constant, grinding pressure of Gotham. Batman finally shifted his weight, turning his head slightly towards her. The white lenses of his cowl seemed to glow with their own internal light in the gloom. "Let's take a closer look at that cab." He didn't need to elaborate. He pushed off the ledge, his cape catching the air, not like a bird, but like a falling piece of the night itself. Batgirl was right behind him, her smaller frame more agile, a diver plunging into the misty depths of the city. They descended in silence, their grappling line sipping with a sound like tearing silk. They landed on the slick street, 50 yards from the cab, their armored boots making no sound. The silence was even deeper here, at street level. It felt thick, heavy, pressing in on them. The cab's engine was still running, a low, contented purr that was the only sound in the entire world. The windshield wipers were on, smearing the greasy mist back and forth in a hypnotic, rhythmic squeak. Inside, a single figure was slumped over the steering wheel. Batman approached with a predator's caution, his hand resting near the utility belt at his waist. Batgirl took the passenger side, her movements fluid and precise. They peered through the glass simultaneously. It was a cop, Officer Miller, from the 17th Precinct. Batman recognized the weary, mustached face from a dozen crime scenes. His head was resting on the steering wheel, his hat askew. His hand was still loosely gripping his radio handset. He looked for all the world like he'd simply fallen asleep from exhaustion. Batgirl gently tried the passenger door. It was unlocked. She eased it open, the faint sound of the car's interior light clicking on, seeming like a gunshot in the stillness. "Officer," she said, her voice soft but firm. No response. The rhythmic squeak of the wipers and the low thrum of the engine were the only reply. Batman opened the driver's side door. The smell of stale coffee and cheap air freshener washed over him. He reached in, his gloved fingers pressing against Miller's neck, searching for a pulse. It was there, slow, steady, but strong. His breathing was deep and regular. He was asleep, just asleep. "He's alive," Batman rumbled, his brow furrowed behind the cowl. "But he's completely unresponsive." Batgirl was already scanning the interior of the car with a multi-spectrum light emitter from her glove. No signs of a struggle, no sedatives in his system, at least nothing obvious on a preliminary scan. His vitals are perfect. He's just in a very, very deep state of sleep. She leaned closer, her own lenses narrowing. Wait, he's mumbling something. They both fell silent, leaning in, the world shrinking to the cramped, stale-smelling confines of the police cruiser. The officer's lips barely moved, a soft, breathy whisper escaping. "The porcelain city, so quiet, no cracks at all." The words were nonsensical, the faint, disconnected poetry of a dream. But the tone was one of utter, blissful peace. It was more disturbing than any scream. Back in the Batcave, the silence was of a different sort. It was the hum of processing power, the gentle drip of water from ancient stone, the quiet rustle of a well-tailored suit. Alfred Pennyworth placed a tray with 2 mugs of steaming, dark liquid on the central console. The aroma of strong black coffee cut through the cool, damp air. He looked at the 2 figures seated before the massive bank of monitors. Bruce was still in his full armor, the cowl resting on the console beside him like a discarded shell. His face, etched with fatigue and concentration, was illuminated by the scrolling lines of data on the main screen. Barbara, her own mask off, had her legs tucked under her on her chair, a tablet propped on her lap as her fingers flew across its surface. Her expression was a mirror of Bruce's, a mixture of intense focus and deep-seated concern. "Any luck with the air sample from the cruiser, sir?" Alfred asked, his voice the calm, steady anchor it had always been. Bruce picked up a mug, the ceramic clinking softly against his armored gauntlet. He took a sip, the heat a welcome shock to his system. "Nothing," he grunted, his gaze never leaving the screen. "No known toxins, no sedatives, no narcotic agents. It's just air." polluted, fog-choked Gotham air. He gestured to a complex waveform analysis on one of the smaller screens. "Barbara?" Barbara sighed, pushing a stray strand of red hair from her face. "It's the same story all over the city. Over the last hour, I've managed to access the telemetry from 47 different GCPD cruisers and 30 public transit vehicles that have gone silent. All the drivers are the same, unresponsive. Vitals are stable, showing brain activity consistent with REM sleep. They're all dreaming." She swiped a finger across her tablet, and a map of Gotham flared to life on the main screen. Dozens of red dots pulsed across the downtown area. And it's spreading. The first reports were isolated, like Officer Miller. Now we're seeing clusters. A whole city block on the west side. A housing project in the Narrows. It's like an invisible wave. Alfred looked at the map, his usually unflappable demeanor showing a rare crack of unease. A sleeping plague? The name hung in the air, tasting of old superstitions and primal fears. Bruce's jaw tightened. Plagues have a vector, a virus, a bacterium, a poison. This has nothing. Nothing we can see, at least. He stood up, pacing back and forth in front of the monitors, a caged animal in its den. The heavy tread of his boots echoed in the vast cavern. The words Miller was saying, "The porcelain city." It feels specific, like a shared hallucination. Barbara's eyes lit up with a sudden thought. A shared signal? Bruce, what if it's not in the air? What if it's in the airwaves? Her fingers danced across her tablet again, bringing up a new set of data streams. I was looking for a signal, something loud and obvious. But what if it's the opposite? What if it's quiet? Something hiding beneath the noise. She isolated the city's ambient radio frequencies, a chaotic mess of police bands, commercial radio, cell phone signals, and white noise. Then, with a series of deft commands, she began to strip them away, one by one, like peeling the layers of an onion. The cacophony on the cave's speakers faded, replaced by static, then near silence. But not complete silence. Underneath it all, almost at the threshold of human hearing, was a single low-frequency tone. It was a soft, rhythmic pulse, a sound so gentle and unassuming it would be easily dismissed as background interference by anyone not specifically looking for it. It was like a slow, steady heartbeat, and woven within that heartbeat, a voice. It was calm, melodic, impossibly soothing. It spoke not in words, but in a cadence that was almost hypnotic, a lullaby for a sleeping metropolis. "Let go of the noise," the voice whispered, impossibly close, as if it were speaking directly into their ears. The grinding gears of worry, the sharp edges of fear, they are a burden you were never meant to carry. Why hold on to the broken pieces? Why stay in a world of cracks and fractures when a perfect city awaits you? A porcelain city, smooth and whole, Let the silence take you. Let the dream hold you. The voice faded back into the pulsing tone, leaving a profound and unnerving stillness in its wake. Bruce and Barbara stared at the speakers, a cold dread settling over them. This wasn't a plague. This was an attack. A weaponized lullaby broadcast to the entire city. He's putting them to sleep, Barbara whispered, her voice barely audible. He's not just making them unconscious, he's inviting them somewhere. Bruce's expression was grim, his eyes hard as flint. He looked at the map, at the spreading red dots that represented thousands of people, lost in a dream of a porcelain city. "And we," he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl, "are going to wake them up." The signal's point of origin was a ghost. It was cleverly bounced and relayed, a digital phantom flitting through Gotham's overloaded communications infrastructure. But Barbara Gordon was no ordinary ghost hunter. For her, the city's network was a home turf, a digital landscape she knew as intimately as the back of her own hand. While Bruce calibrated a set of sonic filters for their cowls, designed to block the hypnotic frequency, she dived headfirst into the stream. She traced phantom signals through encrypted government servers, rode backscatter from commercial broadcast towers, and followed the faintest of digital breadcrumbs through the city's labyrinthine fiber optic network. It was like trying to catch smoke with a net, but her mind moved faster than the signal could bounce. After 47 minutes of intense, silent work, a location finally resolved itself on the main screen. The Kepler Observatory, an old, forgotten relic from a more optimistic age, perched on the highest of the Palisades overlooking the city, its great dome silhouetted against the perpetual gloom. It had been decommissioned for decades, a monument to forgotten science, and now it was broadcasting Gotham's final lullaby. The journey there was a surreal passage through a sleeping world. They took the Batmobile, its engine a low guttural roar that seemed sacrilegious in the suffocating quiet. They passed entire streets where cars were stopped in the middle of intersections, their lights on, their drivers slumped over the wheel. They saw a bus filled with passengers, all of them with their heads against the windows, their faces placid, as if they were merely napping on a long journey home. In a small city park, a group of children on a playground were frozen in place. One at the top of a slide, another mid-swing, all of them fast asleep, gentle smiles on their faces. It was a chillingly peaceful apocalypse. There was no panic, no destruction, just a city that had collectively closed its eyes and drifted away. The filters in their cowls seemed to be working, blocking the hypnotic pulse, but a strange lethargy still hung in the air, a psychic weight that pressed down on their own exhaustion. Bruce hadn't slept in over 36 hours. Barbara was running on caffeine and sheer force of will. The city's unnatural slumber was a tempting siren's call to their own weary bodies. The observatory was even more desolate up close. Weeds grew thick and high through cracks in the asphalt of the parking lot. The white paint on the dome was peeling, revealing the rust-pocked steel beneath. A single bare light bulb flickered weakly over a side entrance, casting long, dancing shadows. They left the car hidden in a grove of skeletal trees and approached on foot, melting into the deeper darkness around the building. No security cameras, no electronic locks, Barbara murmured, her scanners sweeping the building. Whoever this is, they're confident, or they don't care about being found. Batman placed a hand on the rusted steel door. He wants us to find him. This is a performance. With a faint groan of protesting metal, he forced the door open, revealing a dusty, cavernous space that smelled of decay and ozone. The interior was a cathedral of forgotten science. The great telescope, a massive 60-foot tube of riveted steel, pointed up at the perpetually overcast sky like a silent cannon. Around it, antique control panels with bakelite knobs and brass levers stood like ancient altars. But the old technology was infested with the new. Thick, black cables snaked across the floor, connecting modern broadcast equipment, amplifiers, frequency modulators, power converters, to the observatory's main antenna array. The entire setup was a jury-rigged marvel, a bizarre marriage of the antique and the cutting edge. And at the center of it all, seated in a worn leather armchair with his back to them, was a man. He was thin, with a shock of untidy gray hair, wearing a simple lab coat over a rumpled shirt. He didn't turn as they entered. He simply sat, one hand gently tracing the rim of a teacup on a small table beside him. The hypnotic pulse was stronger here, a tangible vibration in the air. Even with the filters, Batman could feel it at the edge of his senses. A gentle, persuasive hum that promised release. The Batman and Batgirl, the man said, his voice the same calm, melodic tone from the broadcast. It was not a voice of surprise, but of patient expectation. I was wondering when you would arrive. Tea? It's chamomile, very soothing. He gestured vaguely with his teacup without looking at them. Who are you? Batman's voice was a harsh counterpoint to the room's gentle hum. The man finally turned his head, and they saw his face for the first time. He was older, Then his voice suggested, with kind, tired eyes set in a deeply wrinkled face. There was no malice in them, no anger, only a profound, bottomless sense of pity. A name is just another noise, isn't it? Another jagged edge. But you may call me the hypnagogue. I am a liberator. Batgirl stepped forward, her stance ready, her voice sharp. You've paralyzed an entire city. You call that liberation? The hypnagogue smiled, a sad, gentle smile. Paralyzed? No, my dear. I've unburdened them. I have given them the one thing they all crave, but can never find in this screaming, chaotic world. I have given them peace, the peace of the porcelain city. He gestured around him. They're all there now, together, in a shared consciousness, a dream we are building together, a world with no pain, no fear, no loss, a perfect, silent world. Suddenly, a low hiss emanated from vents around the room. A fine, colorless mist began to fill the air. My filters are registering an airborne psychoactive agent, Barbara said, her voice tight. A complex hallucinogen. The man, the hypnagogue, chuckled softly. The frequency opens the door to the mind. The gas merely helps one walk through it. You cannot stop me. You are already too late. You are already part of the dream. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The hum grew louder, burrowing past Batman's filters, resonating deep inside his skull. The mist thickened, and the edges of the room began to blur and warp. The great telescope seemed to bend and twist like soft wax. The hypnagogue's calm voice echoed around him, no longer coming from the man in the chair, but from everywhere at once. You, of all people, should welcome it, Batman. A world with no alleys, no pearls scattering on wet pavement. A world where parents never leave their children. The floor beneath his feet dissolved, and he was falling. Not into darkness, but into a memory, sharp and cold and agonizingly real. He was a boy again, standing outside the Monarch Theater. The scent of popcorn, the chill of the night air, his mother's gloved hand, his father's warm laugh. But something was wrong. The image flickered, distorted. His own hands, small and clumsy, were holding a gun. A voice, his own childish voice, whispered, "It's better this way." quieter. The sound of the gunshot was deafening, and he looked down to see not a stranger's crime, but his own. He screamed, a raw, ragged sound, but no noise came out. Beside him, Batgirl was fighting her own war. For her, the mist didn't conjure the past, but a horrifying future. She saw her father, the commissioner, his face pale and still, lying on a hospital bed. His final breath, a disappointed sigh. She saw the city burning, a testament to her failure to save it. And then she saw herself not in a suit of armor, but in a wheelchair, her legs lifeless, her body a prison. The vision was so real, she could feel the cold metal against her skin, the phantom ache in her spine. The hypnagogue's voice whispered to her a venomous comfort. You try so hard. You leap and you fly, but you are so fragile, little bird, so easily broken. Why not rest? Why not close your eyes before the fall? The urge to surrender, to simply let go and sink into the promised oblivion was overwhelming. Her eyelids felt like lead weights. Her limbs ached with a fatigue that was bone deep. She could just sleep. It would be so easy. A sound cut through the hallucinatory fog. It wasn't loud. It was a single, clear, insistent beep. It was the emergency beacon from her utility belt, a frequency she had coded herself, a high-pitched digital shriek designed to cut through any interference. It was a lifeline. She clung to it, focusing on the pure, clean. It didn't just release smoke. It released the magnesium bright flash that seared the eyes and a deafening sonic blast that momentarily shattered the hypnotic frequency. The room erupted in white light and a piercing shriek of feedback. The illusion shattered. For a precious second, the world snapped back into sharp focus. The hypnagogue cried out, his hands flying to his head, his serene composure broken. It was the opening they needed. Batgirl grabbed Batman's arm, hauling the much larger man to his feet. He was disoriented, stumbling, his eyes wide with a horror that had nothing to do with the room around them. "This way," she shouted, dragging him towards the door they'd entered. They burst out into the foggy night, the cool, damp air a shocking slap to the face. Behind them, the hypnagogue's calm, melodic voice returned, no longer soothing, but filled with a chilling, sorrowful promise. "You can run from the dream," it echoed through the mist. "But you can never run from yourselves. You will be back. Everyone comes back to sleep in the end." The ride back from the Palisades was a tense, rattling silence. Batgirl drove the Batmobile, her hands gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. She pushed the vehicle to its limits, the roar of its turbine engine a furious scream that tore through the sleeping city. Bruce sat in the passenger seat, motionless, staring straight ahead. He had not spoken a single word since she had dragged him from the observatory. The white lenses of his cowl were fixed on the road, but she knew he wasn't seeing it. He was still seeing a dark alley, still hearing a gunshot that echoed endlessly in his soul. The hypnagogue hadn't just attacked them, he had burrowed into their minds, found the deepest, most well-guarded cracks in their foundations, and pried them open. She felt the aftershocks of her own vision, the phantom chill of the wheelchair, the imagined weight of her father's disappointment. It was a violation more profound than any physical blow. They didn't go back to the main Batcave. It was compromised, the known location. Instead, she directed the car to a secondary site, a disused subway station deep beneath the financial district, a dusty, forgotten pocket of the city that Bruce had converted into a contingency base. It was smaller, more Spartan, but it was secure. As the heavy steel doors hissed shut behind them, sealing them in, the weight of the night seemed to press down even harder. Alfred was there, his image projected on a holographic display from the main cave. His face was etched with worry. "Barbara, Master Bruce, are you all right? I lost your signal for 2 minutes and 12 seconds. His voice was steady, but the precision of his statement betrayed his anxiety. "We're okay, Alfred," Barbara replied, her voice strained as she climbed out of the car. "We found him. His name is the Hypnagogue. He's using a combination of a low-frequency broadcast and an airborne psychoactive agent." She stripped off her gauntlets, rubbing her tired eyes. Bruce remained in the car, a silent statue of black armor. "Alfred," she said, her voice dropping lower. He got inside our heads. The gas bypasses the suit's filters after prolonged exposure. He uses it to amplify fear, regret. Alfred's holographic image looked past her, towards the silent figure in the Batmobile. "And Master Bruce?" She shook her head, a helpless gesture. He's not responding. He took the worst of it. Alfred's expression was grim. The deepest wounds are the ones we inflict upon ourselves, I suppose. The ones this fiend merely reminds us of. There was a long silence, broken only by the drip of water somewhere in the tunnels and the hum of the station's emergency power. Barbara felt a wave of despair wash over her. They had escaped, but what had they accomplished? The city was still asleep. The hypnagogue was still broadcasting his poison. And her partner, the unshakable, indomitable Batman, was broken. She walked over to the Batmobile and opened the passenger door. "Bruce," she said softly. "Bruce, we need you." He didn't move. She reached out and, for the first time, did something she had never dared to do. She gently reached up and removed his cowl. The face underneath was pale, sweat-sheened, and utterly exhausted. His eyes were open but unfocused, lost in a haunted distance. His jaw was clenched so tight, the muscles in his temples corded. He looked not like a mythic creature of the night, but like a man being crushed under an impossible weight. "That dream he showed you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "It wasn't real. It was a lie designed to break you." His eyes slowly, painfully came into focus, and he looked at her. For a moment she saw not Batman, but the lost little boy he still was, deep down. "It's my fault, Barbara," he rasped, his voice raw. "All of it. If I had been stronger, if I had been faster." "No," she said, her voice suddenly fierce, cutting through his self-recrimination. "That's the lie. That's the poison he's selling. He offers a perfect world by erasing the pain, by erasing the past. But our past, Bruce, our pain, it's what makes us who we are. It's why you do this. It's why I do this. Not to erase it, but to make sure no one else has to go through it." She held his gaze, her own fatigue and fear momentarily forgotten, replaced by a steel resolve. He's weaponizing grief. He's twisting your greatest strength, the vow you made that night, into a weakness. Don't let him. Don't you dare let him win. She saw a flicker of something in his eyes, a spark of the fire she had thought extinguished. He looked at his own hands, the armored gauntlets that had fought so many battles, as if seeing them for the first time. He slowly unclenched his fists. "His plan," Bruce said, his voice stronger now, the gravel returning to it. "He's not just holding the city. This is a proof of concept. He needs a stronger broadcast antenna to make the effect permanent, to reach everyone. The city's main broadcast tower, Pinnacle Plaza." Barbara's mind was already racing, pulling up schematics of the 1,000-foot-tall spire that dominated Gotham's skyline. The central communications hub for the entire tri-state area. If he gets control of that, he puts the world to sleep, Bruce finished, his expression hardening into a familiar grim mask of determination. The broken man was gone. Batman was back. "Alfred," he commanded, his voice now crisp and authoritative as he climbed out of the car. "Begin analyzing the psychoactive agent from our suit's filter residue. We need an antidote, a chemical counter agent we can disperse. Barbara, we need a counter frequency, something to shatter his hypnotic signal. We have to hit him on two fronts." The energy in the subway station shifted. Despair was replaced by purpose. For the next hour, they worked with a frantic, focused intensity. Bruce, in the station's small med lab, synthesized an aerosolized counteragent, a stimulant designed not just to wake the sleepers, but to purge the hallucinogen from their systems. Barbara, hunched over a console, waged a war in the world of sound waves. She couldn't simply block the hypnagogue's frequency. She had to tear it apart. She worked on designing a disruptive sonic pulse, a chaotic, asynchronous wave that would act like a key in a lock, but one that would shatter the tumblers instead of opening it. It was a delicate, dangerous process. One mistake, and she could amplify the hypnotic effect, or worse, cause catastrophic neurological damage to the sleeping populace. The weight of millions of lives rested on her calculations. As they worked, they talked, the silence between them now filled with the clipped, efficient language of a team that knew each other's thoughts. "The dispersal unit on the Batwing will be the most effective delivery system for the antidote," Bruce said, not looking up from his work. "We'll need to time the release to coincide with your sonic pulse. The pulse will only be effective for a few seconds," Barbara cautioned, her eyes glued to the complex waveforms on her screen. "We have to broadcast it from the source, from the tower's main antenna. We have to take him down and turn his own weapon against him." A new sense of dread settled over her. They had to go back, not just to face him, but to enter the heart of his dream machine. "His defenses will be stronger at the tower," Bruce stated, anticipating her thoughts. "The concentration of the gas, the intensity of the frequency, it will be exponentially more powerful." He paused, looking over at her, his expression unreadable. "What you saw back there, Barbara, are you ready to face it again?" She met his gaze, unflinching. "What you saw, are you?" A silent understanding passed between them. They were both wounded, both exposed, but they would face it together. He gave a single sharp nod. "The filters on our cowls are compromised. They won't last long in that environment. We'll have a window of maybe 20 minutes before the hallucinations become debilitating." He sealed a canister of the silvery antidote. "Then we need to be fast." Barbara finalized the last line of code for her counter frequency, uploading it to a high-density drive. and we need to be right. They stood for a moment, the two weary soldiers in their subterranean bunker, the fate of a sleeping city on their shoulders. The night was far from over. The deepest part of the darkness was still ahead. Pinnacle Plaza was a needle of glass and steel that scraped the belly of the fog-choked sky. Tonight, it was a silent tombstone for a city of sleepers. The entire area around it was in the deepest slumber. A police barricade sat abandoned, the officers inside their cars, dreaming. The Batwing, a sliver of darkness against the slightly less dark sky, circled the tower once before depositing Batman and Batgirl on the roof of an adjacent building. The jump across the chasm between the buildings was a 100-foot drop into silence. For a moment, suspended in the air, they were caught between the sleeping world below and the oppressive sky above. They landed like ghosts on the tower's rooftop access deck. The air here, 1,000 feet above the street, was thick with a psychoactive mist, venting in plumes from the tower's HVAC system. The hypnotic pulse was a physical force, a vibration that thrummed through the soles of their boots and resonated in their chests. Their new filters would help, but they both knew it was like holding a shield made of paper against a tidal wave. 20 minutes on the filters, starting now. Batman's voice was tight in their comms. I'll secure the antenna controls. You upload and broadcast the counter frequency. Alfred is standing by to release the antidote via the Batwing the second your pulse goes live. Understood, Barbara replied, her heart hammering against her ribs. They moved through the rooftop access door and into the spire's maintenance levels. The interior of the tower was a fever dream. The hypnagogue had turned the entire structure into a physical extension of his dreamscape. The emergency lights cast long, distorted shadows that seemed to writhe and crawl at the edges of their vision. Faint, ghostly images flickered in the air around them. A child's birthday party, an old woman tending a garden, a lover's embrace. They were walking through the dreams of the city, the collective unconscious made manifest. It was beautiful and terrifying. Mundane wishes and secret fears bled into one another, creating a surreal, shifting collage. As they descended deeper into the tower's maintenance core, the illusions grew more specific, more personal. They were no longer seeing the city's dreams, but their own. A corridor stretched into an impossible length before them, the door at the end receding as they approached. The sound of scattering pearls echoed from the walls. For Barbara, the floor turned to glass, revealing a dizzying drop, and with every step, she could hear the faint, sickening crack of a spine breaking. "It's starting," she grunted, forcing herself to put one foot in front of the other, her eyes fixed on Batman's back. "Focus on the objective," he ordered, his voice strained. He was fighting it too. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he flinched at shadows that weren't there. He was walking through his own personal hell, but he was still moving forward. He was her rock, her anchor in the sea of madness. They reached the central broadcast chamber, a vast, circular room at the heart of the spire. Cables as thick as a man's arm snaked from the floor to a central console where the hypnagogue sat, not in a simple armchair this time, but on a throne of cobbled-together machinery. Wires and electrodes were attached to his temples. His eyes were closed, and a serene smile graced his face. He was no longer just broadcasting the dream. He was living inside it, the god of his own quiet creation. "Welcome back," his voice echoed through the chamber, seeming to come from the walls themselves. "I knew you would come. Everyone wants to come home." The air shimmered, and the room dissolved. They were no longer in a broadcast chamber, but in a perfect, sun-drenched recreation of the Wayne Manor Gardens. A young Martha and Thomas Wayne sat on a bench, smiling, holding out their hands. "Come, Bruce," his mother's voice, a perfect memory, whispered on the wind. "It's time to rest. We've been waiting for you." Batman froze, his breath catching in his throat. This was the ultimate temptation. The lie he had spent his entire life wishing was true. Peace. An end to the war. He took a half step towards them, his hand reaching out. "Bruce, no!" Barbara screamed, but her voice seemed to come from a great distance. She was trapped in her own nightmare. The floor of the garden was covered in broken birds, their wings twisted at unnatural angles. Her father stood over her, his face a mask of cold disappointment. "You couldn't save them," he said, his voice booming. "You can't even save yourself." But something was different this time. She had faced this fear before. In the observatory, it had paralyzed her. Now, it just made her angry. "You're not my father," she snarled, balling her fists. "You're a ghost. You're a parlor trick." She channeled her fear, her rage, into a single point of focus, the drive, the counter frequency. While the hypnagogue was focused on holding Batman in his dream trap, his mental defenses around the broadcast console were weaker. This was her chance. Ignoring the taunting illusions, she sprinted for the console. Automated defense turrets, small, sleek pods, descended from the ceiling, but they were a physical threat, a problem she could solve. She moved with a dancer's grace, weaving between bolts of plasma, throwing a batarang to shatter a focusing lens on one, using her grappling line to swing up and over the console, landing behind the hypnagogue's throne. She slammed the drive into the main port. The system fought her, firewalls like walls of psychic noise rising to block her, but she was Oracle in all but name, a master of the digital realm. She didn't just fight the code, she spoke its language. Lines of her own counter-programming flooded the system, a furious, chaotic assault of logic against the dream's insidious harmony. "Let him go," she screamed, driving her attack home. On the other side of the room, Batman was struggling. The image of his parents was so powerful, so seductive, but Barbara's voice, filled with such fire and defiance, cut through the haze. He looked from his parents' smiling faces to Batgirl, fighting a desperate battle against impossible odds, fighting for him, for the city. He saw the truth. Peace was a lie. And so, our tale comes to a close. The shadows recede, and the light, however brief, returns. Batman and Batgirl, the city's weary guardians, have earned their rest. And so, my friend, have you. Let the story settle. Let the quiet of your own room be a comfort, not a cage. The world will still be there when you wake, with all its noise and all its cracks. And that, perhaps, is a very good thing. Thank you for spending this part of the night with me, with Uncle Grim. Until our next journey into the dark, sleep well and dream of anything but silence. Good night.